and we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Emily Pia, and I am a program manager on No Kid Hungry Center for Best Practices. I'm joined by my colleague, Carolyn Vega, who's also on the Center for Best Practices team. And we're really excited to be joined by three incredible school nutrition directors and nonprofit professionals who do incredible work in their communities to reach kids with food all year long, but especially at this time during school closures to make sure that kiddos in their communities are still getting fed. As I know that many of you are on the phone, are also doing in your community. So we really hope that this is a time that you can use to ask questions of fellow people who are in your same shoes and really have this be a place where the community can come together and bounce ideas and questions off of each other. So to that end, would love to see who's on the phone today. If you want to chat your name and where you're coming from into the chat box, it would be great to see who's on the line. Some housekeeping up front here. You are all in listen only mode, which means that we can't hear you or see you. You should be able to see us, but we can't see you. And so to that end, we would love to hear from you, but if you could send us any questions that you have throughout today's webinar, we have lots of time for questions and answers at the end. If you could send any questions that you have into the Q&A button on the Zoom webinar platform, if you can locate that on that control panel. Already see some rolling in. That's where you can find where you can submit questions. And like I said, we have lots of time at the end reserved to talk and answer your questions. So please go ahead and submit them there as you have them. No need to wait until the Q&A section. We will be sending a recording and a copy of today's slides after the webinar to anyone who registered. And if you have any questions, question box, and go ahead and take a look through that chat. It's great to see representation from all across this country tuning in today. So lots of experts on the line. Let's dive in a little bit to today's content. I'm gonna start us off with a poll question here. Would love to know, the folks who are on the phone, I'm gonna launch this poll question now. What meal service model are you using to feed kids at this time? If you are a sponsor of child nutrition programs, if you're supporting meal service in another capacity, there's an option there for that. And if there's something that I left off here, go ahead and chat your meal. I would say we don't have anyone doing home delivery via mail yet. Oh, one person just rolled in. We have about half doing drive-through and walk-up meal distribution, and some via bus routes, and a lot doing direct delivery to people's homes. I think a little bit more than half of you have voted, so that I'm gonna close it off now. So just to set the stage today, you're gonna hear from speakers who are serving meals via bus routes, who are doing direct delivery to children's homes, and those who are supporting meal service. So it looks like we've got great representation both in the audience and on our speaker side today. I'm closing that poll. Okay. So before we kind of dive into the content of today's webinar, Carolyn and I are just going to cover some of No Kid Hungry's resources and what we're doing right now as it relates to school closures. So I'm going to let Carolyn introduce a lot of the resources that she's worked very hard to keep up to date. Carolyn, go ahead and take it away.
Yes, thanks, Emily. So if you go to the link on that slide, you can see all of these resources. And again, we are continuing to keep these up to date. So that's the best place to go rather than just downloading PDFs, because as I'm sure you've learned over the past month to 6 weeks, things change all the time. So we do have a summary of all of the current nationwide waivers, a comparison of usual summer and after school meal requirements to current flexibilities, along with kind of a one-stop shop FAQ, about how things can operate during this unprecedented time. And then a separate document looking at emerging strategies and tactics. So that's more of the different service models, different best practices for staffing and planning. We have a shorter document that pulls out just that emergency planning and staff safety information because we know that's so critical right now. And then we also have an FAQ on pandemic EBT and coronavirus response now. So for some of you in the school nutrition world, pandemic EBT is probably a big thing right now. We know a lot of states are trying to get that going. Others are still working on applications. So if you're curious what that's about and how it works, we have that FAQ up on our site. So as always, your state agency is going to be the best place for information if you're a program operator, but these can be a really helpful one-stop shop just to get a sense for what's possible. And then especially if you are an organization trying to provide support or additional services at this time, it can be really helpful since you may not be getting that information directly from your state agency. But these are nationwide waivers. Not all states have adopted them or are necessarily implementing them in the same way. So always a plug to work with your state agency at this time.
Thank you. And we also wanted to let you know that our summer texting hotline has been reactivated at this time to be a service that connects kids and families to meals during school closures. It's the same hotline if you're familiar with our summer texting hotline. So you can text food, or in Spanish, comida, to 877-877 to find your 3 closest coronavirus meal sites instead of summer meal sites. Right now we are active in 38 states plus Washington, D.C., and we have a handful more states where we have only a couple meal sites in there as well. You can go ahead and test it yourself to see if you have sites in your area or if you're an operator, a sponsor, and want to make sure that your sites are live on our hotline. You can test that out. If you notice that your sites are not populating on our hotline, that link down at the bottom there, freemealsforkids.com, is a public portal where you can submit data, and we have a template and we're able to upload it to the hotline. We are receiving data directly from state agencies and from the USDA. So that is the data that we have. But we are able, like I said, to accept additional data if you notice that your sites are not up on the hotline. And just this week, we also launched a map, an online map that shows where meal sites are during this time, and that's also available in English and Spanish. And so when I send these slides out afterwards, you can click on the link on that slide and test out the map for yourself as well. Okay, and I think we have 2 last things as it relates to advocacy before we hand it over to the real experts here. Call to action, we are asking everyone to submit a public comment on the Summer Food Service Program proposed rule. Comments close tomorrow. So this comment period was extended an extra month because of school closures and everything that the community is doing right now to make sure that kids still have access to meals. So definitely take advantage of this extended comment period. There were 101 comments submitted as of yesterday, and we know that this rule would affect a lot of people. So if you haven't yet submitted a comment, we have a template submission letter hyperlinked on the slide, and again, you'll receive these slides afterwards that you can use to tailor your own comment. And just a little bit of background, this proposed rule would reinstate a lot of the flexibilities that were rescinded by the 2018 memoranda rescission. And so that includes things like meal site visits, first week site visits. This would, for one example, this rule does many things, but one example, this rule would, any sponsor who has less than 10 sites, you would still have to do a first week site visit. Any sponsor that has more than 10 sites, though, is given an extended period of 14 days to do those first week site visits. And the rule allows for those food service reviews and first week site visits, or first 2 week site visits, to be done at the same time. There are some things that this rule does not include that we are advocating for example, as it relates to offer versus serve, which was affected by the 2018 memoranda rescission. This rule only extends to school food authorities, allowing school food authorities to take advantage of that offer versus serve flexibility. And it would not allow for nonprofit sponsors to use offer versus serve in future programming. This, as a note, will not affect summer 2020. This will be if that rule takes effect. So go ahead and read the rule. Check out the webinar recording if you need more background information on all of the details. We've had a couple webinars on the topic, and use our template submission letter to submit your own comment, and always feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I'm going to hand it back over to Carolyn to do some to tell us a little bit about what No Kid Hungry is doing in the advocacy space as it relates to waivers and USDA and extending those nationwide waivers that have been passed. And then we are going to dive in.
Great. Yeah, so I'll just speak briefly since I know this is a question on many minds right now. We are working to encourage the USDA to proactively extend as many of the nationwide waivers through the end of the summer to September 30th, since they have the authority to issue nationwide waivers through September 30th. So we know that may be helpful for a lot of you planning for the summer. So that is one thing that we are working on. And then our wonderful advocacy team is continuing to monitor activity on the Hill. And our highest priority at the moment is increasing SNAP benefits, since we know that so many families and families with children are struggling, and that is a great way to get them the food that they need. But we are also continuing to look at what other support and resources and flexibilities operators will need going forward. So with that, we are going to dive into our content, since we have a lot of great speakers for you today. And first up, we will have Beth Morris, the School Nutrition Director for Lynchburg City Public Schools in Virginia. And additionally, and beyond all of this great work she's been doing in the COVID-19 response, she is one of our 2019 After School Meals Champions. So she will have a lot of great insights to share with you today. Take it away, Beth.
All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. And before I start, I just want to say what an honor it is to be with everybody that is participating in the webinar today. I don't think ever in my 19 years in school nutrition have I been more proud to be called a lunch lady. I know that we all now are not just lunch ladies or lunch gentlemen, but we are first responders. So thank you all for all the work that you're doing to feed the kids in your community. As Carolyn said, I am Beth Morris, and I'm the Director of School Nutrition for Lynchburg City Schools. We're located in Central Virginia. A little bit about Lynchburg City Schools. We have an enrollment. We're an urban suburban school district. We have an enrollment of about 8,200 students. 58% of our students are directly certified for free meals, and overall 64% of our students are eligible for free or reduced price meals. So we are a high poverty school district. We have 20 schools, and all but the 2 high schools operate under the community eligibility provision. In addition to operating the National School Lunch and School Breakfast program, we also serve supper at 8 of our schools through the CACFP At-Risk Supper program, and we have been a sponsor of the Summer Food Service program for, since 2015. Next. Great. Our COVID-19 story started on Friday, March 13th. We did have a meeting of our senior leadership in the division that morning with the idea or the anticipation that there may be school closures sometime in the future. But none of us had any idea that that was going to happen within hours. And so at 1 o'clock, we got notice that Governor Northam had announced school closures for the following 2 weeks. During our morning meeting, we had committed to preparing and serving our kids, but we in no way had a plan in place on Friday afternoon. So just short of miraculous was the efforts of my team over basically 70 hours to change our food service model from national school lunch program in cafeterias to serving kids in a non-congregate feeding model. That took taking our usable inventory from the 16 sites that we were not going to be using. We identified 4 sites that, because of the kitchen and cold storage capacity, could handle the volume of food, and also the location of those sites in relationship to covering the the demographics of the city. So 16 sites were shut down, and over that weekend we moved all of the food that we could use from those 16 sites. We brought in our managers from those sites, and then consequently the site teams. And by 4 o'clock on Sunday afternoon, we had 5,000 meals ready to go out on Monday morning via buses. So next. So this is this is what Monday morning looked like. We took and divided up the our site teams to be working at each one of the 4 sites. So they were there, and as you can see, they were ready and gung-ho, ready to get going. We had buses loaded by 11 o'clock. We had 65 buses divided amongst those 4 sites, and by between 11 and 12:30, we had run the elementary school bus route, and that day we fed 1,250 children. And this we followed this same model for the duration of the 2 weeks that schools were closed. But on March 23rd, we heard from the governor that schools would be closed for the remainder of the school year. And we did realize that the model that we had created for what we had originally thought was going to be a temporary closure was not sustainable for the duration of looking at 9 additional weeks. So during the week of the 23rd, while we still were serving every day, I was working to derive a service model that was going to be more sustainable. So we have now modified our emergency summer food service delivery and pickup. Next. Thanks. So we are operating the USDA Summer Food Service Program. I had applied for and gotten the waivers for non-congregate feeding, for flexibility of mealtime, and also the waiver that allowed parents or guardians to pick up the meals without their children being present. As I previously stated, we have 4 school sites that are preparing and packaging meals. As I said, we have 103 school nutrition site employees, and 81 of them are currently active in this effort. That's 78% of my staff. We did make exemptions for individuals that have health issues and childcare issues that would not allow them to safely work or able to work. I do want everyone to know that every school nutrition employee is being paid for this time through the end of the school year contract. We're now providing meals service Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and we're using a SAC, a meal bag that includes 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches. So in effect, kids are getting 6 days worth of meals. All of the items that are packaged in the bag are cold or shelf stable components, but in order to use up some of our commodity and items that were in our inventory, on our delivery days of Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays, we are preparing those hamburgers or those chicken sandwiches, corn dog nuggets, and having them in a separate bag and handing them out to the kids so that we can provide a hot entree 3 days out of the week. We have at our 4 preparation sites, those are also places where we're providing curbside pickup. During the, and I just have to give a shout out to our transportation team, and for any of you all that are partnering with your transportation. I just think one of the real pluses of this has been the opportunity to get to know individuals in the school district that you may not work with in normal times. And it's just been a real pleasure to work with our transportation team to feed these kids. And during our normal summers, we have a wonderful relationship with the Lynchburg Parks and Recreation, and we partner with them to feed kids, and they stepped up and opened up 6 of their neighborhood centers, and their staff is doing the distribution, where we are delivering the food to them each day. And they also have provided 3 vans with drivers to go into some of our more congested concentrations of housing communities to feed the kids there. Next. We are operating under all of the guidelines of the Summer Food Service Program with the flexibilities that they've allowed, and we really appreciate the one that allowed us to serve multiple meals. And so I did make an adjustment to our meal count roster, which identifies that we're serving both breakfast and lunch, and we are serving 2 days worth. And so for each meal count, that represents 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches. And have confirmed with our state agency that they will accept this as documentation. And this is our bus delivery. These buses are going out from each one of the 4 sites, trying to and following safe practices. What we are doing, and we are finding that a wonderful cooperation with the children and the families that we're serving. When the bus arrives at the bus stop, the bus driver opens the door and asks everybody to please back up and get into line. At that time, the school nutrition employee that is on the bus counts the number of meals that need to be brought out to the children, brings them out, and our bus drivers are actually doing the count while the school nutrition employee is handing out those meals. Next. And this is at EC Glass High School, one of our schools that is preparing the meals and packaging meals. And this is our curbside model, where again, a family drives up to the front of the school, identifies how many meals they will need at that time. The employee, the school nutrition employee, puts just the number of meals on the table that is needed by that family. And then once the family leaves, we sanitize the table, and the next family arrives. Up in the right-hand corner is actually one of our neighborhood centers through Parks and Rec, and they're following that same model. And again, I just have to say it's been a real blessing to be able to have that flexibility where parents pick up for their children. And how we're accounting for that, we do have a sheet at the table where we do ask that the parents sign in and also identify. That's the only time we're asking for identification of children, but so that we can confirm that the parent is actually picking up for someone that we can identify 18 years of age or younger. Obviously, we live in a world of food safety, but we've had to ramp that up just a little bit to work with the particulars of COVID-19. We immediately began practicing social distancing. That has required us to move our preparation operation out into the dining areas. And so this picture here at Heritage High School shows that we're using our workstations so that our staff can feel comfortable and safe while they are doing the work that that they're doing each day. Obviously, gloves. We are following the recommendation that gloves be worn at all times, even during receiving, during meal distribution, and definitely emphasizing that hand washing happens every 45 minutes, regardless of what task you're involved in. We implemented masks on April 1st. Previously, CDC was not necessarily recommending that we needed to have masks, but when it became evident that that was the recommendation, and again, thank you to our community who made masks, we've definitely got some colorful ladies and men out in our cafeterias right now. I just wanted to point you towards some resources. Lunch Assist has a comprehensive operations manual. School Food Handler has some SOPs that are specific to operations during COVID-19, and obviously School Nutrition Association. I've been able to track CDC information and other important information pertaining to COVID-19 safety. Next. And as of Friday, we had been operating for 28 days and had served 67,000 breakfasts and 67,000 lunches to kids throughout Lynchburg. And I know that when this started, I put on the strong face and I'd go home in the evening and just cry. It was just overwhelming. It was scary. I felt that I was operating inside of a bubble, but it didn't take long for me to reach out and feel those hands reaching back out to me through a social, through our social connections. And I just wanted to point out two groups on Facebook, Tips for School Meals That Rock, just an incredible resource of support, of ideas, and of encouragement, and also the School Nutrition Professionals, where again, we're sharing ideas, but we're also trying to share some humor, and as we all work our way through this and do the essential work that we're all doing. And finally, we know that it's all essential. We know that what we're doing, and if there's ever been a time, it is now that school nutrition stands in the forefront of meeting the needs of our children every day. And we know that. The cards aren't needed for us to know that, but I just, it certainly brightens the days of my staff when they come back off the buses, or they've received cards, or children have taken the time to make posters that say thank you. And it's the right thing to do. We're doing it, and I know that our community is depending on it and is appreciative for it. So thank you all for your time.
Thanks so much, Beth. Every time I hear Beth talk, I get goosebumps. I mean, just an amazing service that you and your team are running, and so important. And just thank you for all the time and effort that you put in every single day to make sure that kids still have access to meals right now. So just thank you so much. And thank you everyone on the line for submitting your questions. We're seeing them coming in, so we will get to them at the end of our speaker lineup. And not to confuse you, but I'm going to hand things over to another Beth. It will be sure to make our Q&A portion interesting when we're directing questions to Beth. Beth Kraus is the Director of Child Nutrition Programs at Ithaca City School District in New York. And we're very grateful to have her on the line. She has a little bit of a different model to share with you here today. And she's an expert in her own right and is doing incredible work alongside the other Beth. So I'm really excited for her to share with you all what she's doing and her team's doing. Beth?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. This has been an exciting time since March 13th. I'm in upstate New York, about 4 hours north of New York City. And March 13th, we were told schools were closing. I had put in the waiver to New York State the day before and had actually ordered Uncrustables, 300 cases of Uncrustables, and got them delivered that week for summer feeding. So I was lucky to have that on hand, and we had breakfast breaks on hand. We worked all that weekend, the 14th, 15th, to get up and running for Ithaca Schools service. We started out the week with 6 sites and delivering to homes. We have a school district of over 5,000 kids, and we thought it would be safest when the New York pause came into place that we would be able to deliver to all homes. So we are also doing it with 7 kitchen staff. They are social distancing, they're sanitizing all the time, and they're doing 3,000 meals a day with 7 people in the kitchen. And of course, we teamed up with transportation to deliver the meals through the school buses. Next. So we had to figure out how to do online and call ahead ordering for families. So what we did is a Google document, a Google spreadsheet, and a form. So the form comes out into a spreadsheet. So on the spreadsheet, it has what the parents actually want, what the allergies are for each student, how many meals they need a day, and their addresses. So that's how we do the routing, is it comes right off of the one Google spreadsheet. The parents or 211, we have a system here in Ithaca where parents can call 211 and they will fill out the form for them if they don't have internet or access to a computer. And they fill out the form once a week, and that's to accommodate religious preferences and food allergies. So on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the form. And telling people what is happening, we've had interviews with the local papers and the news, and we also have on the school district website the school meal closure form, so they can link right to it and link to the menu each week. So this has been the most complicated part of the whole thing is the form and helping people fill it out, but it's working. Okay, next. So we are delivering to 700 homes, and first thing in the morning, the milk is rolled outside. So our kitchen staff is totally separate from who's grabbing the actual food and putting it on the bus. The kitchen staff stays in the kitchen pod for food, for safety. So the milk is rolled outside. This is only 3/4 of the milk that goes out a day. Okay, next. This is one day's worth of breakfast that was packed by the kitchen the day before. So we were getting breakfast breaks. For the first few weeks, we had breakfast breaks for the prepackaged meals, and so the staff were working like Monday through Saturday to get everything ready. When we ran out of breakfast breaks, because I can no longer source them, they had to work on Sundays also. But we're back to getting a few more breakfast breaks. And this is all shelf stable for the breakfast. So that gets ready and sent out each day. Okay, the next. Coolers are lined up and sanitized and filled with lunches before 6 a.m. Well, we had about half of the amount of coolers we needed when this all started because we had them for summer feeding. So quickly got on Amazon and Walmart to get more coolers and got those in. The coolers are sanitized once at night and once in the morning, and this is one of the filling. This is where they're put in at night. Okay, next. We're filling up the coolers every day that we have in the kitchen. These are the lunches packed. So we try to do things that are cold and ready to go for the next morning because at 6 a.m. the buses leave between 6 a.m. and 6:30 to get out on the routes. We're 10 square miles and we have 10 buses going out. Every work surface is sanitized hourly, including light switches, doorknobs, key fobs, things like that. Next. Again, I said I was lucky to get those Uncrustables, so you can see that we're filling freezers with Uncrustables. Okay, next. The next. Okay. The meal choices vary weekly. That's because we went and emptied all the schools. We have 14 schools in the district, went and emptied all the schools to see what we would have available. So we're trying to do a variety of things. On the left, you'll see the Gimme Organic Sea Salt Seaweed. We got that donated. We're using some of the government taco meat with reheat directions on the menus. And I email the parents also every Sunday after they've turned in all their forms. I can email them with how to cook the items and things like that. If they don't have email, we've also done instant messaging through the phones, and we've also done a Facebook page to tell them how to reheat things. Okay, next. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew this is hard work for the staff. Breakfast and lunches are lined up at 6 a.m. and those coolers are heavy. They're 100 to 150 pounds, and this is just half the amount of coolers or 3/4 the amount of coolers that we're using on a daily basis. So if you see that garage door right there, nobody from the outside, even vendors or anything at this point are allowed in that kitchen area. And of course, from day one, we started taking temperatures of all employees before they even entered the area. Next. My screen's a little bit slower. Okay, there we go. So this starts really early in the morning. It starts before the sun even rises. We have 1 or 2 people loading the buses. These are food service people that are also runners, so they're people who get off the buses and run to the houses with the meals. Next. And the buses, it's hard to see in this picture, but the buses are loaded with coolers, boxes, breakfast, and milk. It's amazing how quickly a school bus can be loaded with the meal. Next. And of course, it's all for the kids, and the staff just love these little notes each time that we deliver the meals. One thing that we are doing tomorrow also is we're taking the census data out with the meals. So I've been asked by the census people to take the census forms out and deliver them with the meals. So that'll be starting tomorrow. There's been separate transportation runs for diapers actually in this community and formula. There's been runs for books, and there's been runs for packages of homework for the kids. And I was thinking there's something else coming up they asked us to do a run for, but the census is the next one. So, and then thank you.
Thanks so much, Beth. My mind is just blown to have 7 people preparing 3,000 meals a day almost. I just can't even fathom how fast and hard that must be, and all before 6 a.m. before those buses go out. So just, again, amazing work. And if you have questions for Beth, go ahead and send them in the questions and answers portion of the Zoom webinar screen. We've seen a few come in, so thanks for that. We're going to transition a little bit here, and I'm excited to have Heidi Davis, who's the Children's Programs Coordinator for the Second Harvest Food Bank of Northeast Tennessee, joining us today. Heidi will share with you, she has lots of experience running non-congregate meals because her food bank has been doing that with private funding for the past couple years. She'll tell you more, but her food bank decided, even though they are sponsors of the Summer Meals Program, they've been working in close coordination with their schools in their area and since there are lots of procurement challenges, made the difficult decision to support their meal service, and they're providing complimentary service like food boxes for families in addition to the kids that those school districts and their communities are serving. And she's just been a rock star in helping all of their school districts start up with non-congregate as they are new to it and Heidi's not. So Heidi is going to be a great question, or a great person to ask questions to as it relates to community partners and working with others, for example, food banks in your community to provide more wraparound services. Like I said, she's also got extensive knowledge of non-congregate because she's been doing it for a while, so can help with that. And yeah, if we have to transition back to a normal summer as usual, she might be a good person to pick her brain on how you might continue some of your non-congregate into the summer, should that nationwide waiver not be extended. But we are advocating, like Carolyn said, hard to make sure that those waivers are extended. Nonetheless, happy to have Heidi join us, and I'm going to hand it over to her. Heidi?
Hey, hello. Thanks, Emily. We have been with No Kid Hungry since I started the food bank in 2015, and we were really lucky to have done a community choice model back at the very beginning, and that was really eye-opening to me. So I've been an advocate for non-congregate waivers for a while. But I wanted to highlight some of the work that we were normally doing during summer in Hancock County. It's a very rural area. It has about less than 7,000 people that live there. So we've been a sponsor since 2012. All of the school systems and summer food sponsors in East Tennessee use the same food management company. It's really strategic the rest of the time because we can, use that buying power to get healthier items and get really great pricing on items for us to use in the summer program. But right now it means that we're all competing against each other to be able to get items that we need to make meals. So we decided not to try to be getting items because we knew that schools were having a hard time being able to get what they needed. So we're not doing that. We're looking nationally right now to get food. Beth was talking about breakfast breaks. We've been looking for those. Everything right now has a 2-month procurement lead-in time. So we're just gonna have to wait until June for us to be able to get the meals shipped into us so that we can start serving. But we will eventually, and hopefully we'll be able to give the schools a break for a little bit if we can pick up for them. Okay. So, so we've been working with schools day one. I'm very happy to see that a lot of schools have chosen to do a mobile program. That was another thing that when you do non-congregate programs, you realize how important it is to have a mobile meals model, especially for rural communities where car access and public transportation just doesn't exist sometimes. And we've been supplementing everything that our schools are doing. We have 14 school systems that we're providing food boxes to, fresh produce boxes, cereal, granola bars, peanut butter crackers, anything that we can get in that they can get out to families. They're either putting it on their buses when they're delivering their meals, or they're doing special distributions for families to do a drive-through pickup. And the biggest thing that we try to offer is just technical assistance for folks that are not used to doing this and how to do it with social distancing. So we have that available if anyone ever has questions for us with that. Okay, Hancock County is where we ran our test pilot. It has less than 7,000 people. We have about 1,300 kids. It should be all CEP, but they're not. I think like the elementary school is 100% free and reduced lunch. The high school and middle school are around 96%. So it's a very tiny, tiny town nestled in the ridges of the Appalachian Mountains. The town is in the middle of 3 mountain ranges. So for most families, it's a 25-minute drive down a mountain and up a mountain if you had to come to a school system to pick up meals. So it's really important that we have spots out in the community or some kind of mobile model going out to those families because they won't be able to get into the schools. We'll go to the next slide. This is just a picture of downtown. And that is from one of the houses that we deliver meals to. So that's Sneedville in Hancock County. So we have been doing mobile meal models for a really long time. So to do this in a rural community, we had to adapt it because a bus was not going to be able to get up really steep roads, and the roads could be really tiny in rural areas. So we adapted to use a church van. We had one staff member that was doing the delivery, and we usually had like a volunteer that would go with them. We did shelf-stable and thaw-and-serve meals. And for the regular summer program, we have children eat at the van. We have a table and chairs that we carry around in the van that we pop up. But you know, that we only had about 20 kids come out per day. We did it for a month. We tested it out. We did 561 meals. For the month of July, we switched in the study to a community choice model. That we got a mid-size SUV because we needed something that could go up into the mountains. We still did the same kind of meals. We just switched them to be able to pack in coolers that we could roll around. We made sure everything we had wheels on it because it gets very heavy and hard to pick up. So we made sure everything had wheels, or we had ways to put wheels under it. And then we had families would either pick up meals at certain locations. We would do home delivery. And what we did is we actually used a mobile app for folks to sign off. So each kid had a PIN number. They would come pick up their meals and have to tell us what their PIN was, and we put the PIN in for them into the app. So that's how we tracked the kids. We averaged about 100 kids a day. We had 140 kids sign up for that service. So 100 to 115 meals, well, kids were served a day, and we did 2 meals a day. So for that month, 5,000 meals compared to the 500. This is how we do it. We have, these are our thaw and serve meals. So we're thawing them out in a refrigerator. We pack them into coolers. And then we pack it into the back of a van. We bag up what we need to do as we get to the house, and then we do home delivery to each of the kids. Yeah. So this is a model for how this begins out. I always put this in here so that folks can kind of see like the different ways that we do the thing. It's helpful. And I put this down as an analysis of cost. So the top part here is like an actual cost for that we calculated for a group that was starting from the very beginning, had to figure out how to do staffing and labor, equipment, buy all the food. And then we ran the program and saw that this was how much we're going to get hypothetically reimbursed for that amount if a non-congregate waiver ever went through. And we had that variance. So in this first year, we knew that for your first year running, you may not make money to cover the whole program. But after that, when you have, you know, all of your equipment and you have like your staffing, or maybe you switch to a volunteer model, that it is possible to run non-congregate in other ways and still make enough money to cover your program, even in a really rural place like this. Okay, so the great things about doing the non-congregate is we got to know the families really well. We got to get a better understanding of what, like the kind of difficulties the families had making it to meal sites in town. And we learned a great deal of Hancock County's geography, especially like where cell phone signal was going to go out and where gas stations exist. A lot of the time, cell phone signal did not work. We had to use paper maps. And we learned that people don't normally have numbers on their houses. So, you know, we had to be saved by the mail carriers a couple of times. We'll go to the next one. Yeah, and this is it. GPS didn't work, cell phone signal didn't work. Especially during the summer when it was really storming outside, the roads would get very muddy, and even in an all-wheel drive vehicle, we had a really hard time getting into some places that we were trying to get to. So it was easy to get lost, and we had 15% of families that didn't participate each day. And you know, the most important thing was training families on like food safety with on-serve meals. You know, it was a transition, but those were like our challenges. We figured them out as they came up, and we just kind of kept pushing forward. So if I had the ability to do this stuff again, in which I've done it a couple of times, we would add additional staff. I very much considered getting a four-wheeler because we would get stuck going into the mountains some places when we were doing home delivery. I wanted to give more time for families to sign up. They only had about 2 weeks to sign up. That's why we got 140 kids for this model. And then I wish we had more time to ask community members for input before we try to do it. Emergencies happen and stuff like this happens, so that you just have to like go with your instinct. And I'm so proud of the schools. They've done such a great job at transitioning with no time. And you know, none of us have done non-congregate before, so figuring it out as you go and hitting all of those challenges and just pushing forward for the kids has been really great. I commend everyone that's been willing to do that. Okay, so how we used what we learned about non-congregate programs. Now, whenever we're starting any kind of new program, we don't try to copy and paste things. We go in and we talk to the community first and see what resources we have to meet the needs that they're saying that they have. We identify community partners that are willing to help deliver services, because sometimes we don't have the capacity to do that. And we let partners lead on program design and offer best practices from our experience. So whenever we're doing a non-congregate model, we always talk to the folks that are going to be helping us and the folks in the community that are going to be receiving the services first, and they kind of decide what's going to work best for them. And we work with that to make it work with whatever we're doing. So families gave feedback that food boxes were the most helpful part of the program when we're doing the meal delivery every day. And for a lot of these folks that didn't have access to fresh produce, so we made sure to include fresh produce delivery with our dry good deliveries. Yeah, but there's that. Now we can go to the next slide. Okay, that's one of our home deliveries, the happiest baby in the world. So No Kid Hungry took all these pictures of us, but this was a really great pilot program that we were in the summer, and we've been advocating for non-congregate waivers ever since. I know this is an emergency, but I hope that we take the time to learn a lot about our communities with this moment and figure out how to serve kids better, especially the kids in really rural areas like this that don't have access to the program the way that it's normally run. Right. So I wanted to talk really quickly about how food banks can support school systems right now. We're working with all 14 of our school systems providing that food. So if you all are meeting the families and you have, like, I know you may not have the capacity to add one more thing to your school bus, but if there's ways that we can figure out how to work together, definitely contact your food banks and see if there's ways they can be feeding that whole household. But we really appreciate you all feeding the kids for sure. All right, that's that.
Great, thank you so much, Heidi. So now, as you see up on the slide, we'll be taking questions, and all of our speakers graciously allowed us to give out their contact information. So if we're not able to get to your question and you have a question for a specific speaker, you can always reach out to ask and commiserate later. But to kick it off, some people did submit some questions already. So this is for Beth Morris, if you want to get yourself off mute. First, how did you communicate when you would be at each of the bus stops?
We actually have that on our website. and it's a map, and that's beyond my pay grade, how they did that. But it literally looks like a Google map, and you click on the little dot and it shows when that bus will be there. And again, we had to adjust the schedule because it certainly is much different than the elementary school route was the model we started with, but that had to be really amended over that 2-week period, because at first parents were waiting or children were waiting and the bus wasn't coming. So that was a work in progress, but it is working, and that's how we're communicating it to our families.
Great. Speaks to the power of partnering with your school transportation department.
And IT.
And IT, yes. Great. All right. And another question that we got was, how are you verifying with adults that they have eligible kids?
Okay, well, that's a requirement that came down with the waiver, and we were given various best practices, as this is a first under the summer food service program. We all know that it's only available, and for our first 2 weeks we were operating that the child had to be there until we had that waiver. So we met the minimum best practice, and that was have an adult sign that they are receiving for the number of children. The summer food service program is available to all children 18 years of age or younger, and our community certainly has more children in it than are in our database of Lynchburg City Schools. So we have done our best to meet that requirement of having parents identify themselves and the children that they are picking the meals up for. And if we're audited, I'm being honest, if we're audited, we will show that documentation, and we will be able to go into our database and hopefully identify, a majority of those children that are listed. But my response to a federal audit would be, this is a summer food service program. It is not, individuals, children are not identified, and there are certainly children that were fed, thank you, through the summer food service program that Lynchburg City Schools was operating.
Thank you so much for your answer on that one. I know it's a question for many out there. So a question for Beth Kraus now, came in while you were talking. What are your menus for shelf-stable breakfasts?
Right now we're using the breakfast breaks because I was able to get them. So the breakfast breaks include the cereal, a juice package. We do the milk on the side, and it includes also like a graham cracker. But when I wasn't able to get them, we again use cereals or Pop-Tarts or breakfast granola bars, things that we were able to procure and meet the school lunch program regulation.
Okay, great, thank you. And we did get a few questions for Heidi. The first one is, how did you get information about which families needed delivery or would pick up?
Right before the summer started, so we were doing a testing. So during the month of June, we were testing what it would be like to run a regular summer food service program in that county. So during that time, we were signing up kids. So we had like a cap of 250 kids, and we let families sign up as we could, but we worked with a community service center. So, and one of our community partners that's like a pantry in that neighborhood, we put it out on CB radio to everyone over that listens to the police station, that they could sign up, and all they had to do was call into the community service center. Those folks were trained on how to fill out an application for them and get all the questions back. And they just had like a Google form they filled out for us. So we used that to make our list.
Great, thank you. And in our final seconds here, I just want to ask, this is for any of our speakers, has anyone been asking you about pandemic EBT, or have you done any work to proactively give information to families about SNAP or free and reduced price eligibility applications?
Our food bank has a SNAP team that helps people process applications. So we stay kind of up to date on that, and we have a SNAP hotline that people can call in, and we'll talk to them, help them fill out their application. So several food banks have that.
Great. And either of the Beths, has any of this come up for you?
We have been given some preliminary information from the Virginia Department of Education that the emergency EBTs or pandemic EBTs are in the works, but nothing concrete at this point. It's more working out the logistics, but we are encouraged that it will be available to Virginia families here in the very near future.
Okay, thank you. And I think I saw Beth Krause shaking her head no, so I'm going to guess that has not come up, although then again, it seems like you're having very minimal contact with your families, at least in person these days. So with that, I know we are just over time here, so I will turn it back over to Emily to close us out, but I just also want to offer my thanks to our speakers for taking time today.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know my Wi-Fi's been going in and out a little bit, so thanks for bearing with us too in the technology issues. Before we go, if you wouldn't mind answering one quick poll question. I know that typically we have our Summer Meals webinar series that No Kid Hungry runs from January to June. And we know that it's probably not going to look the same for the next 2 months as what we had originally planned. So would love to get your feedback. Thanks for all of you who are voting on what topics you would like to discuss in May and June webinars, given the changing environment of summer meals at this time. So just wanted to gather your feedback. It's really split though. So I'll leave this open for a couple seconds. Do take note, again, if you have questions for our amazing speakers, their emails are still up on the slide. And again, we'll send around a copy of the slides afterwards. So you can ask them questions if you didn't get a chance to on today's webinar. I'm gonna end polling. Thank you so much. And this one should be hopefully easier. If you could tell me whether you would like to have multiple 30-minute webinars on a topic or have longer 60-minute webinars like this, what works best for your schedule so that we can accommodate that. I really hope it's not 50-50. So thank you again to each of you for participating, for taking the time, for tuning in. Thank you again to our speakers and just everything that all of these heroes are doing all across the country to make sure that kids still have access to nutritious food. I think Beth Morris said it best that you are essential, and we all know that, and what you're doing is so important and so necessary at this time. So on behalf of all of No Kid Hungry, thank you all. And thanks for tuning in today. Stay tuned for more.